Hey everyone, this is Keith Baker. I am the host of the Dancing with Cancer podcast, where we talk about how to live an upbeat, joyful life in the middle of the cancer storm. Let's go. Welcome everyone to the very first episode of Dancing with Cancer. My name is Keith Baker and I have recently been diagnosed with myofibrosis. Now, myofibrosis is a rare blood bone marrow cancer. I had previously been diagnosed with polycythemia vera, another different blood cancer. After 1,001 tests, the oncologist for the polycythemia vera determined that I would get my blood checked once a month. They'd prick my finger, they'd take blood, they'd look at the hematocrit number, and if the hematocrit was over 45, they would drain my blood. Now, polycythemia vera is a condition where your bone marrow creates too many stem cells that then mature into red blood cells. So your body is creating too many red blood cells. The problem with that is too many red blood cells makes your blood thicker. And thicker blood causes strokes, causes heart attacks, causes blood clots. And so the treatment was simply to go in, have my finger pricked, they check the number. If it's over 45 hematocrit, they would just simply drain my blood. And so for 30 plus years, I've been doing that. And although it's inconvenient, it could be a lot more serious than that. And essentially, I've been a blood-making machine for 30 plus years, but it was bad blood. So they couldn't use the blood. They had to throw it away. Well, evidently, there are these rare occasions when the polycythemia vera, it's almost like your bone marrow is working double hard, producing all these extra red blood cells, and then all of a sudden it wears out. Now, technically, my understanding is it's actually developing scar tissue in the bone marrow. The bone marrow is a softer tissue on the inside of your bone that creates, my understanding is, stem cells that become blood cells. Red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And my bone marrow is developing scar tissue that's limiting the production of these stem cells or red blood cells, and in some cases creating mutated stem cells or blood cells. And then those blood cells, when they replicate mutated cells, which is the cancer. So anyways, I have been diagnosed with myofibrosis, a very rare blood bone marrow cancer. My understanding is the only actual cure for myofibrosis is a stem cell transplant. And they only do that in very, very serious cases because it in and of itself is very serious and potentially dangerous. And so they don't just go into that unless they have to or need to. So I may be a candidate for that at some point in the future, but as of right now, that's not going to be treated. Now, there's a secondary issue also, is I have an enlarged spleen. And my understanding is because my bone marrow was not creating enough red blood cells or creating mutated red blood cells, my spleen then has tried to overcompensate for that and tried to create red blood cells as well. And it's created or caused the spleen to expand or swell, and my spleen is probably double the size of most people. Now, the problem with that is it's actually taking up too much room inside, and so for example, when I eat, I get full a lot quicker than most people do, so I'm not eating as much, and that's causing me to lose weight. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. We know the diagnosis as myofibrosis. Now, I will need a bone marrow biopsy to determine how severe my specific condition is, and that will determine the treatment I will take as well. And probably once that's determined, then we'll be put on medication to try to shrink the spleen as well. So we'll see how that goes and where that goes. And so on the front end, you go to the doctor and they give you this news and you're kind of like trying to take it in. You ask all the pertinent questions, but there's just a lot of information to try to swallow in and take in at one time. And so you get home and you start thinking about other questions. And so you get online and you Google it and you start really reading up and trying to figure out exactly what is this and how does it work and what's due. And so that's what I did. I went on home and I started looking in Google, and I tried to limit all my searches to the Cleveland Clinic and the Mayo Clinic because I wanted it to be from reliable sources. You can get a lot of bad information from the internet as well. So I wanted it to be from reliable sources, and I started reading up on myofibrosis, and crap, it's just not a good thing. But we don't know exactly how severe it is. That's really the bigger critical factor. So in theory, once we got the diagnosis, we didn't know if it meant, hey, I got 6 months to live, or I got 6 years to live, or I got, we just didn't have any frame of reference, because that would all be determined by the severity of my case and my situation. And so that's where we're at. And we're wanting to do this podcast to, one, update friends on my specific condition, but more so to talk about the bigger pictures and the bigger issues that's surrounding cancer or any serious illness. So, and so over the next several episodes, we'll talk about some specific issues that I'm going through specifically, but more so we want to talk about everything else that comes with it. How do you think? How do you control what you think? And trust me, it's a lot harder than you think. You just say, well, I just won't think about it. Or I'll think about positive things. I'll think about good things. Well, sometimes it just is there, And then you start, your mind takes off everywhere. Well, if I'm not here a year from now, what does that mean for my spouse, my wife? I've been married with Kathy. We just in December celebrated 44 years together. I did not hesitate there. I knew exactly what it was. We have been together for 44 years, and the thought of me not being there with her a year from now, what does that mean for her? And what does it mean for our finances? And, I've got 2 children. I got a son and daughter-in-law in Wisconsin. They are co-pastors of a church. And I've got a daughter in northern Ohio, probably mid-northern Ohio, whatever, 30 minutes north of Columbus. And she has 2 boys, so I have 2 grandsons, 12 and 8. And what does that mean for them? I always look forward to walking alongside them their entire, up through high school. Just as a random fact, I worked with teens for over 35 years at the church we attend, or at different churches over the years. And I loved and had a blast working with teens, but I also kind of felt like I would be able to walk alongside my own grandsons during their teen years and just help encourage them and make sure that, that help them through the teen years. Because it's a tough time for everybody. It was a tough time for me, the teen years, and most of us struggle during that time of life. And I wanted to be there for my grandsons during that time of life. And now I don't know if that really is going to happen or not. And so we're going to talk about all those type things in the future episodes, as well as my specific conditions. But, how do you deal with the financial issues? How do you deal with the emotional issues? How do you deal with the spouse and marriage issues? How do you deal with just not being overcome with the darkness or the futility of that and those kinds of things? And so we really want to touch base on all those things. My goal in this podcast is simply to encourage others. I really want other people who are struggling and going through these similar types of things to know that there is a way to go through these things successfully, for lack of a better term. There is a way to experience joy and hope and peace, even with this crazy stuff going on. Now, I'm on the front end. I get that. And I haven't experienced as severe the actual physical side of it yet. And so I know that's only going to get worse as time goes on. I get that. And maybe I'm naive based on that. Maybe. But my intent and my goal with this podcast is to laugh a lot, to share with everyone what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing, what I'm thinking, and how I'm dealing with some of those thoughts and those ideas and those concepts. And maybe even some big picture issues as far as, again, my outlook on life, or how what does this mean to my finances? What does this mean to my spouse? What does this mean to my marriage? What does this, do I change the way I live day to day if I only have a year left or 6 months left versus if I got 6 years or 10 years? Or even just knowing that there's a time limit that's different than if you were the average person. Now, I totally get anybody could walk out and get hit by a truck any day. Anybody could have a car accident and be done today. But the reality is we don't think in those terms until someone tells you, hey, we know for sure that you've got a very specific disease or a situation where your situation is different than everybody else's. And so please come along with us on this journey over the next several episodes as we, again, give you some updates on my specific situation, but also talk about some of those big picture things, maybe some philosophical things, and try to encourage everyone and maybe bring some smiles to each one. Now, I do want 2 real quick disclaimers. In big, broad, general terms, if you've known me for a while, you know I am, as a personality or as a person, I am a cup half full kind of person. And so I tend to see things through that lens. So if you don't like that, if that's a problem for you, you probably don't want to be a part of this podcast. Just saying, it is what it is. The second disclaimer I wanted to throw out there real quick is I'm a goofball. And I joke around a lot, and it's just who I am. It's the way I process things. It's the way I handle things. And I'm sure that's going to come through in this podcast at different times. And if that's a problem, and I get that we're talking about cancer, and cancer is a very, very serious thing. I got it. I get it. But I will probably, in fairness, say some stupid stuff at times. So just be aware that I am who I am, and that's what you're getting in this podcast. So thank you guys for joining in for the first episode. Please come back and see some of the other episodes as, again, we venture into some of these different things. Be good and take care. Bye-bye. Hey, thanks to everyone for stopping by. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button. Also, please slam that subscribe button to ensure that you do not miss on any future episodes. Lastly, if you know someone who needs encouragement or who is going through a difficult time, please share this with them. More than anything else, we want to share this joy and hope that we have with as many people as possible. And we'd love to have others join the Dancing with Cancer family. Until next time, adios.